and everything. I'm like, God,
That's what we expect of sound engineers. So.
work them right. Yeah.
Exactly.
Are you good to go?
Well, thank you so much for joining us. My name is Tony Diaz, el Libro Traficante. I'm the literary curator for the Latino Bookstore here at the Guadalupe Cultural Arts Center complex. And we're so happy to continue with our Texas Author Series. I want to mention her name first before I give the entire context of what you're experiencing here. But we really want to welcome one of our new friends. I really love it because I admire her work. It's great to meet her in person. And it's great that now you are part of the Latino Bookstore familia. And I'm speaking about Guadalupe Garcia McCall. So first of all, thank you so much for joining us. Really great to have you here. And of course, for folks who are watching on live stream or in the future, we are, of course, a multi-platform broadcast, which means we come to you first in person. Could be anywhere in the country, cool live events, but we also broadcast on social media. This video will also appear on fox26houston.com. An audio of this will appear on 90.1 FM KPFT, your Houston community station. By the way, this is my chance to remind folks that community radio is run by sponsors. So if you can, we ask access to some of its leaders, its visionaries, and that's exactly what Guadalupe is. And I want to mention too that it takes a lot of Latinos to get stuff done. Shout out to our director, Cecilia Bailly, who's the director of the Guadalupe Cultural Arts Center, because it was her vision to create a bookstore 5 years ago. And we're broadcasting from San Antonio's west side, where corporate institutions have ignored and neglected this site for different endeavors. It takes us to build a site like this. So if you can't see right now, we have the Latino Bookstore right next to us on the other side of the wall. And in this room, it's actually a gallery, which right now is also hosting an exhibit for Day of the Dead. Next month, it'll host actually a visual art exhibit as well as a literary exposition as well. And right now, this year, we're on the first Friday of every month. But this is part of the legacy of Community Cultural Capital that we're happy to link you to as well. We also reach out to different schools. We also reach out to high schools, middle schools, and colleges and universities. So if folks are teachers, they can reach out to us. We know you've got extensive lesson plans on some of your other books. And this is a nice segue to talk about Echoes of Grace. I don't think there's lesson plans yet for Echoes of Grace, are there?
No,
not yet. So that's a challenge to folks that can do that sort of work. But we know a lot of teachers that are excited about using those lesson plans in schools and have. I'm so glad that we get to hear more about your trajectory. You've got several books. This is a new endeavor. You're hitting a high school audience, hitting tougher issues. But what I love is that you bring this corazón and experience to the table as well. And it's amazing that you've been able to be committed to education, to community, to literature all these years. I also want folks to know that this is a continuing relationship. So today we're focusing on Echoes of Grace. We're going to have copies of it now at the Latino Bookstore, signed copies from now forever. And you've got other books coming out throughout the rest of the year. And for folks to find out more about what we do, we're planning the next year right now, and that's going to be a part of your book tour as well. So we want the Latino books to be fundamental to your work, and we want our folks who are listening and who want to come here to visit as well. And the last thing I'm going to say before I throw the mic to you is that this is actually a visitor center as well. So we're not just showcasing the west side, which we are. We're not just showcasing San Antonio, which we are. We're not just showcasing Tejas, which we are. This is for folks from around the country to come visit, and throughout the working week, they can come by and take a little bit of our cultura home. And I'll stop talking now because I really want folks to know more about you and your book. So please welcome our dear friend and new part of our familia, Guadalupe Garcia McCall.
Thank you very much. My name is Guadalupe Garcia McCall. I actually was born in Piedras Negras, Coahuila, and I came in as a 6-year-old from Mexico, and we lived in Eagle Pass, Texas. From there, I went on to West Texas to Salva State University, became a teacher, taught many years before I finally got published because it was a dream of mine to get published. And so, right before retirement, my first book, Under the Mesquite, came out. And it was a blessing in my life. It changed my life. A lot of people wonder, are those little stickers important when you see them in books? And they are. The Pura Bel Prey Award that went to my first novel changed the trajectory of my career. It was supposed to be a quiet book, and all of a sudden it was making noise. And all of a sudden we were being seen. My students whom I wrote the book for, my people, my community on the border, we were all of a sudden on a national level being seen. And that's super important for me, that we continue to embrace the books that are here for our community. So I'm so glad for this place and just feeling so blessed for being here, Tony. Thank you so much for this. It is an honor to be here. So I want to talk a little bit about Echoes of Grace because it is my 6th book and my newest baby. I do have 2 more books in the pipeline and I'm working on 5 others, but this is today's book. This is my baby. So Echoes of Grace came about and it just came out on August of this year, but it came about because many years ago in 2012, I was sitting at home and my son said, I'm coming home, we're coming home for the weekend. And so being a mom of college boys, I ran to the grocery store, literally got in the car and ran to the grocery store. But I couldn't get out of our little rural area. There were a lot of cars for emergency vehicles, police officers, EMS, all these vehicles were there. And I thought, well, I don't know what's going on, but I couldn't get through. So I had to go around. And it made an impression on me that there were so many vehicles. The next morning, I found out what had happened. And all it said on the news, and they described it as 2 young women, they said that a young woman was leaving to go to work and had left her child with her sister on the porch, and the child had let go of her hand and had run out into the parking area and had been killed by his mother. And I was in shock. I mean, I was literally, I want to say, almost traumatized by this. I just kept thinking, why would this, how could this happen, right? Why does this happen? Because it's not the first time that I've heard of horrible incidents like this. It was just the first time that it happened right there and in our neighborhood. And so I was really concerned and really distraught about it. My son came the next day, my sons, and they said, Mom, have you heard about this? You hear what happened? And I said, I can't stop thinking about it. I just literally can't stop thinking about it. And I started on a rant, which is what happens when I am in a traumatized or emotional state. I want to find out why. And I started telling them, it's not the mother's fault. It's not the sister's fault. It's the government. I said, where are the government-funded programs that would help a young woman be able to put her child in daycare so that this wouldn't have happened if that child had been in daycare? And where are even without the government, where are the social organizations, the community work? These programs, these community programs are underfunded and understaffed. And that's why our community has so many horrible things happen sometimes. That's why our community suffers so much. That's why we have so much trauma and so much shame and so much pain in our communities because we are not being supported. And so I kept going about it, and finally, after hours of this, even though I was cutting carrots and cutting potatoes and making caldo and doing the things that I normally do in my day, to take care of my children, I was still distraught. I was still angry about it. And I want to say that I was angry. And so my son sat on the couch and he said, why are you so upset about it? I've never seen you this upset. And I thought about it, and then it hit me. I was that girl. I was that mother. But I was also that sister. You see, when I went to college in West Texas at Salva State University, I had a child. My sister had a child. So we had 2 toddlers, and we had to take care of them without government funding, without food stamps, without assistance from programs, without anybody else but each other and our husbands. But my husband was a student, and her husband was still, I'm thinking he was in Mexico, but he was working. He was working. He was not making enough. So here we were, 2 girls from the border, from Eagle Pass, trying to change our stars, doing everything we could to change our impoverished status, because my father couldn't even help us, even if he had wanted to, because he didn't have money. He had lost all his money when my mother got cancer and he tried saving her life with all our savings. He lost everything. And yet here we were trying to recover from one trauma and going into this situation where we were having to take care of each other. So we would get both our boys, were toddlers, and we would put them in the carrito, in the little stroller, and we would put a colcha over them, and we would walk to the university because we didn't have a car. Walk 10 blocks, sometimes in the snow. I'm not lying. You know that joke about the snow uphill? I'm not lying. It was sometimes snowing, and we had the boys in that little stroller, one stroller, because that's all we could afford. And we would walk there, and we would get to the student center, and bless the Lord, thank the Lord for the student center, because we would sit there on those little area with the couches and put that colcha to work. We laid it on the floor, and we put the boys there, and we watched them, and we had an area. This was our area. It was a babysitting area. And my sister would say, okay, time for my class, take care of it. And then my husband would say, oh, yeah, I gotta go too. And then it was on me to watch those 2 boys. And how many times did my sister hold me tight? She was a skinny little thing. She'd put her skinny arm around my neck, and she would kiss me hard, and she would say, watch him. Take care of him, Lupe. Something happens to him, I'll cut you like a fish. And I was like, thank you so much for that horrible. She would say, you know that frog in science class? That's going to be you. If something happens to him. And I was like, oh my God, Vicky, go to class. It's going to be fine. But I remember what was behind that. It was fear. Fear that she was putting the most precious possession she owned in my hands. And it was off hands for her in that moment. And she couldn't fathom that. I had the same fear. That's why I recognized it in her. We made it through. She became a principal, I became a teacher and an author. Now she has businesses, now that she's retired. It was a great outcome. But the journey there was so traumatizing at times. It was so hard at times that I understood in that moment what those girls must be going through. I kept asking myself, what if that had been me? What if something had happened to baby Martin while he was on my watch? How would I make it up to her? How could I ever reconcile that and come back to sisterhood with her? I don't know that I could. I don't know that she'd forgive me. And those thoughts were the reasons that I was angry, because nobody should have to go through that. And if we had government funding, if we had organizations that were staffed, then we could make a difference in young women's lives. And that stuck with me. And it fueled my anger, the relationship, but also the brokenness of the system, the brokenness of some of our community members who have had traumatic experience imposed on them because they are impoverished, because they are disenfranchised, because they have no skills, that they have not been given time and opportunity to develop. So I went to bed that night and I started getting the story. The story usually starts in my head as visions, sequences of like a movie in my head. And I started getting those, but I noticed that they were very fragmented. These fragments that were coming in from this character who told me her name was Grace were wildly different from anything I had ever experienced before. They were not the, oh, let me tell you a happy story, or let me give you a fun sequence. No, these were hard moments. These were moments and visions that I did not understand. So I had to put them away. I would write them, but I would just put them in a file. And I kept saying, Grace, let go. Let go of the story. Give me the rest of the story. And I would get little pieces. And so I named the file Grace Fully Letting Go. Like gracefully letting go, that's what I named it. I wanted her to have that space to give me the story. I want to share just one of her visions that she gave me. It was probably like the first one. I want to say this was the first one that she gave me. And I collected them all, but I want to share this one. And I'll talk a little bit more about how it fits into the puzzle in a minute. On the porch, Alexander stands on his tippy toes and picks up the bristly black caterpillar from its place on the railing. It rolls itself into a semicircle in the palm of his tiny hand and remains there. Each segment is open, separating the black spine and exposing the tender crimson skin between, one bright layer after another. I try to stay present, like Mercy warned, but something has changed. And I know it's happening again. That weird thing Juanita Rosa calls echoes. The don, a kind of woman's intuition with sights and sounds and smells shared by most of the women in my family, starts to manifest something before me. I stand very still, trying not to be overwhelmed, waiting for the premonition to pass through me as it does most times. The morning light pulsates and wavers, making each bristle of dark hair on the caterpillar glint and bounce back light. Suddenly, I am somewhere else. The echo is clear as raindrops shimmering on freshly polished black patent leather shoes. And I am suspended in another time, another place. A light breeze filters through the dead leaves of the mulberry tree, and the caterpillar's fussy hairs tremble. Its soft red belly starts to quiver and palpitate, as if something inside of it is trying to push itself out. Spotted wings like white oleander blossoms burst through the caterpillar's back and almost as quickly desiccate and drop off. Delicate yellow sprouts begin to break through the tender segments of red skin. They spiral upward and outward, spiky horns that grow and grow. But then the flesh darkens and dulls, and one after another, the black bristles fall off and lie glistening on Alexander's hand like dark, poisoned pine needles. And hundreds of tiny, white, starving maggots, thin and spindly as grass roots, crawl out. They devour the moist innards so fast, so swiftly. It frightens me. And I slap the dead thing out of Alexander's hand. So that was the first vision she gave me. And I'm like, girl, I don't know what you're doing to me right now. That was a little bit creepy and a little bit scary. If you think about it, it's a vision and it's like really close up. And I didn't know what it meant. And it just kept coming and playing in my head like a movie that wouldn't stop playing. And so I was like, I have to write this down. And I could see Grace at the beginning of every one of those movies, and I could see her slapping the caterpillar away. But I didn't understand what it meant. I just knew that this was what she wanted me to write. So after years of many of these moments with Grace, I was like, okay, I guess it's gonna take me years to write this novel. If it ever is gonna be a novel, maybe it's gonna be something else. I don't know what it's gonna be. But I was getting my MFA, and in the final year, they ask you, UTEP, they ask you to write a full-length novel. That's gonna be your thesis. And so they said, send us an idea. I happened to be writing All the Stars Denied that semester. I had penciled it in. I need it by December. I have this semester to turn it in. I'm under contract with Books. And I thought, another novel, another full-length novel by the same time. Well, I had to do it, right? So I was trying to crack the code. What do I write? What do I write? And there's Gracefully Letting Go in a file. And I thought, I'm gonna do it. I'm just gonna put together a little summary and turn it in and see if I can do it. So I turned in a little summary. And I turned it in and they said, yeah, this sounds really interesting, do it. And I said, okay. And I knew it was about two girls, and I knew it was about the death of Alexander that happens very early on in the novel, and I knew it was about coming back to sisterhood. That's all I knew. Coming back to sisterhood. How do you make it up? And I wanted to explore that in a novel form. So I started writing it, and it was the hardest novel to write, because she was giving me, in all those files that I had, she was literally giving me things in different time periods in her life. And then she was also giving me pieces from her grandmother and her mother. And then I started creating or understanding that there were many mysteries in her life that she was not sharing with me. It was almost like she wanted me to put the puzzle pieces together for her or with her. And I was like, well, let's do it, girl. So we went in. And what happened is I had to use what is called a parallel timeline or a parallel narrative, which is one chapter here, one chapter in the past, one chapter here, one chapter in the past, in which these chapters are moving along at the same pace in a story structure that tells you all the pieces. But it was really interesting because here was 3 years ago, this year, 3 years ago, this year. But at the same time, it was within those, mother story, grandmother story, boy next door story, it was all these really convoluted pieces. So it took me all semester to put it together. And I have to say, I just slapped it together that first semester, that first rough draft. Because I knew that in the spring we were going to revise, my teacher and I were going to revise Daniel Chacon, so we did it. And the second semester, he was like, and I was like, so we did it. And then when I was done with it, I was like, I actually like what happened. And I liked it because I discovered so much about Grace. I discovered that this was more than about a relationship with her sister. It was more than the brokenness that came from losing Alexander. It was the story of women in trauma for generations, women who have suffered and have carried the echoes of that trauma with them and without even knowing it, gifted them to their daughters. So it's generational trauma without understanding that our trauma needs to be dealt with. Because if not, they become secrets in our families. And those secrets, they die and produce maggots and do all the things that little caterpillar did. It is a cycle of destruction. It is what we call the beautiful decay of our lives. And so we have to deal with it. We have to stop with the secrets. We have to stop burying things underground. We have to talk to our daughters about our lives. We have to say, Mija, this is what happened, and this is what you don't want to happen. And a man might come and he might look like a good man, but you have to be careful. You have to understand that as a woman, you are vulnerable, but you have power too. You have power because I have gifted you my story. And I have gifted you this knowledge, this that will free you and will build a better life for you. And so that's what was at the end of it when I started, because I make you write an analysis paper, I was like, that's what this was about. I want to read to you a second piece that speaks more to that generational trauma, the abuse, the neglect of women, the crimes against women, femicide, the hard things that we do not speak about because they are just so hard. This is chapter 21. The sun shone glorious and magnificent in the sky, and I wanted nothing more than to take a long, luxurious walk and let it bathe my skin in warmth. Wondering where Lucia was, when and if I was ever going to see her again, I decided to check out the warehouse she mentioned before she left. I went back to my room and looked through the summer dresses in the old wardrobe. They were all so pretty, and they looked like they would fit me. I took the yellow one out. The delicate lace on the scooped neckline was handmade, and I wondered how old it was. I wasn't sure, but I thought it might be vintage, so some 1970s. Could this be my grandmother's? I put the dress up against myself and flounced the skirt back and forth in front of the mirror, trying to get a better feel for how it would move when I walked in it. It was longer than I was used to wearing, but that was part of its charm. I took the dress and went to Abuelita's room, hoping to get her permission. The room was dark and unusually cold for a summer day, but she was fast asleep in her cocoon of blankets, so I didn't bother her. At the warehouse, I picked up some mangoes and smelled them. I thought a mango salad would make a nice dessert if I put it on bread over the last of the goat cheese in the refrigerator. I put some vegetables in the light green mesh bag I brought along with me. There was a warm breeze when I left the warehouse, and I lifted my face and closed my eyes for a moment. The red soda pop in my hand was sweating, and I took a swig of it. I thought about finishing at the warehouse so I could leave the glass there, but I didn't want to linger in there anymore. I wanted to walk in sunlight, move my muscles, enjoy some of the freedom I've been missing the last 2 days. I was rounding the corner towards Abuela Estela's house when I heard a familiar, unwelcomed sound. The slow, low-winded whistle sent a shiver down my spine, and I turned around. The sight of Manuel grinning at me as he walked slowly behind me made me drop the bottle of soda. The sturdy round bottle landed at my feet, bounced and thumped over to its side, then started rolling in a semicircle around my shoes, drawing a jagged red line on the ground as the liquid spilled out. My vision blurred, and I started to shake. Somewhere in the distant recesses of my mind, a woman howled. A deep, pained, ear-piercing wail that shattered the bottle before me. A starburst of red blood. The woman's soul-wrenching sobs turned into words and the sobs turned into my mother's voice, crying out, "Help me!" She screamed, "Someone please help me!" My legs buckled under me, and I caught myself just in time before falling to my knees. The bottle dropped again and again from my hand. The glass clinked against the small pebbles on the dirt road, rolling sideways and spewing line after line of red liquid. Again and again, somewhere in the distance of time and space, my mother screamed over and over again. The bottle, the burst, the blood, and my mother's scream became a series of sights and sounds that repeated again and again before me and inside me and echoing feverishly in my mind. "No!" I screamed, putting the echo aside. "No!" My heart was racing, my stomach lurched, and I thought I might throw up. "Calm down," I told myself. "Breathe. You're having an echo, that's all. There's no real danger. Nothing's really wrong. You're fine, you're fine." But no matter how hard I tried to make myself believe what my mind knew to be true, I had no way of stopping my body from reacting violently to my surroundings. "Where have you been?" Manuel asked, calling out to me from about 10 yards away on the other side of the narrow dirt road. "I've been looking for you." My vision steadied, but my heart was still beating so fast I couldn't think straight. "Stay away from me!" I was aware that my words might anger him, but unable to do anything else other than what my instincts demanded. And my instincts were screaming for me to move, to get away as quickly as my legs would take me, and get away from Manuel. So that's what I did. I dropped the mesh bag. I let the groceries spill all over the ground and swiveled on my heels and started walking off fast as my legs would take me. Abuela Stella's house was half a block away on the other side of the street where Manuel was walking now. If I hurried, I could get away from him. If I hurried, I could cross the road up ahead and beat Manuel to the gate. If I hurried, I could get there in 2, maybe 3 minutes. If I hurried, I could save myself. And that was another vision that she gave me. So as you can imagine, there was a lot of hard moments where I had to stop and just breathe and step away from the novel. That's why I think it took me so long to gather all the images, because they were so hard to deal with. At the end of the novel, when I understood it, we were talking about crimes against women. That Grace was not just talking about loss and the lives of a child and the impoverished state of her family and the social economic stratifications. I also understood that she was talking about generational trauma. So that she was talking about the women in Juarez, the women who were still getting hurt and killed and dead and left on the side of the road. The women that are suffering in every part of the world because crimes against women do not have any boundaries. Crimes against women exist in every culture, every social background. And so we have to think about that. What are we really talking about when we talk about generational trauma? We are talking about the things that happen to women all over the world, that have been happening since the beginning of time and are still happening today. I'll never forget it. I was editing this book in its final stages when Gabby Petito goes missing. And I am tied, glued to the television, hoping this boy did not kill her. And of course, we know he did. And we know how tragic the whole story was, how it played out with secrets, how nobody was talking to those parents. Nobody was telling them, your daughter is gone. People who knew, including that boy, did not want to have it known. They were sweeping it under the rug. They thought that they could get away with it. And that's what this book is about. It's about how women are suffering globally, how women have suffered globally since the beginning of time. And it's time now to call it out and say, no more. We have to do something. I left resources in the back of this book for people, for women who, or even men, people who are in abusive situations and want out. There are resources in the back of the book. There are many places that you can call that are national foundations that do have resources for you. But more important, it's important that we look at it and try to be helpful in any way we can. If it means saving a loved one or saving a stranger, it doesn't matter. Help. Find resources for people that you know are suffering and help them out. So that's it. That's my presentation on Echoes of Grace.
Wow. Awesome.
Thank you. I would love to take questions.
I have a quick question. So it sounds like you've invented a name for this state where I don't want to call it trauma. I don't want to call it, you're calling it an echo.
Right, right.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, because they were coming in and I was trying to make sense of it, I thought, this is so weird. And once I was starting to write the novel, I realized that it was a lot like that movie, Stir of Echoes with Kevin Bacon. And I was like, yeah, that's what she's having. She's having echoes, because I didn't mention this, but there are ghosts in this story. It's a Gothic novel. So here's the 4 mysteries. What do the echoes mean, right? Why are there literal ghosts coming out of the woodwork? There are 2 main ghosts. There's more, but there's 2 main ghosts. A little one that is very benign and very lovable, you'll love him. And then a dark, ugly, huge thing that she just calls the dark thing. And I would remember when I was writing it, she would just call it the dark thing. She would say the dark thing was in the room. And I'm like, that's so creepy. But so what are the echoes mean? What are the ghosts doing there? Why are they suddenly coming out of the woodwork? What happened to their mother when they were little? All they know is the mother was murdered, but they don't know anything else. There's been a lot of trauma in this young woman's life. She lost her mother very young. They've lost Alexander now, and now she's got echoes and ghosts everywhere. And then the final mystery is how is it all tied together? How is all this tied together? These weird visions and sights and sounds that she has, her mother's death, the ghosts, and Alexander's death. How is it all tied together? And so it took me, like I said, it took me a semester to figure it out. But I got the echoes from, that's a long answer, but I got the echoes from Stir of Echoes. And I thought it was perfect because I finally figured out I was writing a Borderlands Gothic novel in the vein of like Rebecca and Jane Eyre, that kind of vein. Yes?
Are there any authors that you can say specifically are influencing the work that you do, or more specifically on this kind of more mature angle that you take in your most recent book?
I was a high school teacher for many years, but my love of reading came from when I was very young. And so going through the process of school, one of the things that we studied was genres. And so I was always drawn to Edgar Allan Poe for his dark but very nuanced poetry that speaks so much to the human condition. So his poetry to me was up here. And then I read Rebecca and Jane Eyre. and studied it and analyzed it. Our teacher was fantastic. Ms. Urbina, rest her soul, she was the most wonderful teacher. And we analyzed it, we saw it as a feminist book, and Jane Eyre too. And so when this came about, because I've been writing like middle school stuff, which was fun. But when this came around, I wanted it to be in that vein. I wanted those books that I had read and had been like influenced by to be part of that narrative, to show our borderlands in that genre, which historically has not been our genre, to tell the world we have our own stories. We have Gothic novels. We have fantasy novels. We've got cucuys that you don't know about. But we got stuff, and you should read us. And so this is, most of my books, all of my books have been different genres. So I've done contemporary, fantasy, historical, and now Gothic. And I'm diving into a romantic comedy right now, so a rom-com. I want the world to see we are not one note. We are not niche. We have the same value as the rest of your literature. Open a book, read us, you'll find out. Yes, sir.
I wanted to ask, I think one of the most poignant parts that you talked about right now was generational health. Because we always talk about generational wealth, right, and creating a legacy, but we don't really address the generational health that really is going to be the foundation for that. You can have a lot of wealth and you can amass titles and this and that, but if you don't really take care of that, then it kind of is a burden for you. How did you personally take care of those traumas that you had? Did you do it by your writing, or was this like a mental health journey that you had, that you started or somewhere? If you don't mind sharing, I know that can be very personal, but I think the book is very personal, so it sounds like you'll be willing to share.
All my books are really personal.
Yeah.
I want to say that I have had much trauma in my life. Losing my mother to cancer at 17 was very hard, and probably still working through that, because like I'm writing the rom-com and my son was sat next to me and I was telling him about it, and he says, this was yesterday, he says, always with the dead moms. like he looks at me like, and and it's because he didn't go through it. His mother's sitting right there and she's loving on him and kissing him like all the time. So he doesn't know what that feels like and what that looks like. So I would say that my first book, Under the Mesquite, was autobiographical. It was about a girl who loses her mother at 17 to cancer. So that's me. Like 85% of that book is me. But every book since then, I have been healing myself in other traumatic experiences. And this is no different. I'm healing me and my sister. And I kept telling her, I'm writing a book, and she was like, don't write anything I wouldn't write. But it's because I wanted her to read it and heal like I have. And I feel like I have put that ghost aside. But it is very important that we seek assistance as a community, as individuals, as women especially. We need to seek assistance and heal ourselves. You are so right. How can we amass generational wealth when we are not healthy, when we haven't reached that point in our lives? And so in order to be able to take care of our money and to take care of the money we're going to leave to our descendants, we also need to take care of ourselves. And women are not good at that. I know, because I was a mom I'm still a mom, what am I saying? But my kids are grown. But when my kids were at home, I didn't take care of myself. I took care of them. I took care of the house. I took care of the garden. I took care of the trash. I took care of everything. And I didn't have anything left for me. And so we need to think about that. How do we take care of ourselves, keep ourselves healthy, and in that way take care of our children, our generations to come, but also our community? Because women are at the heart of our community. We are the givers, right? And so we need to also learn how to give to ourselves first and stay healthy. But yes,
I just want to comment one last thing. I think you are practicing that. You're not just speaking it, you're practicing it. Because for your son to be comfortable enough to say that
Mhm.
to you and for you to kind of laugh with him,
Yeah.
that just goes to show that y'all have done the work, that you're comfortable with it. It's not a taboo
Right.
subject. It's
Yeah.
not a secret that you keep guarded
Yeah.
or that he has to tiptoe around that. I think that's part of the generational health that not only your book advocates for, but that you are doing within your own family. So I'd like to give you your flowers for that.
thank you.
Kudos.
Gracias. I do try to heal some of the things the old wounds that have come from being a borderline kid. And I wanted to also heal those for my children. And I'm honestly very honest with them, very straightforward, very open with them about my life and also their lives. And it's reciprocal, so it does just come back to us. So we need to remember that. It's going to be okay when we open the floodgates. Any other questions? Okay.
We'll get our books in.
Well, let's get one signed.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Toby.
And I want to thank Rico Bravo, who is our sound engineer. He is archiving this. It'll wind up on our podcast. It'll wind up on our radio show. It'll wind up on our video broadcast as well. I want to thank Roxana Guzman, who's behind the scenes producing this as well. And I'm not going to abuse my position, so I wanted so much to be the first to buy this copy because she read from it. So that's a cool story to tell. Like, see that book on my shelf? That's signed by Guadalupe. She read from it that day, but I will not abuse my position as the literary curator. I'm going to let somebody else, but I do encourage folks to take this opportunity to get your copy, get it signed, and for folks que están sintonizando through the magic of media, no se pongan celosos. We're going to make sure that there's some signed copies for you to come and get at your leisure. So thank you so much for sharing and for changing the world. That's just my copy, and I'll come back and get it.
Okay.
Well, I wanted that copy, which one is it to get?
But it'll be in the hospital, right?
Yes.